Calculated risks. Calculated risks is how the Hollywood game is played and won. Hello friends, I'm Cal Barnes. This is Unlimited Creation, and today we're going to see how the players play the game. Just the act of moving to Hollywood, if you're coming from the outside, if you're moving here to be an actor or a filmmaker or a writer or a producer or working crew, is a risk. No risk, no reward. That is life. Why do I say calculated risks? Because risk without calculation, unbarred, untethered, caution to the wind risk is not a very good strategy. Now, there is something to that. Moving here in your late teens or your early 20s to give it a shot is a form of unbarred, untethered, uncalculated risk, meaning you are just banking on your talent, your God-given looks or talent to win the game. And it does happen, and that's what keeps the whole thing going. But most of us would never move here if we didn't believe that we would be that one person, and that's very important, because if you don't believe, you're never going to come here. But if you don't get lucky, and I will be honest, it is all luck in the beginning. It could be literally anybody, because most people have some level of talent that move here. They have some level of good looks if they're going for those types of roles, and it literally just comes down to right place or right time. Or, for example, 100 people will audition for the role that all look somewhat the same. 10 of those actors will get the call back, meaning those 10 actors right there are all good enough to play the part. They could probably actually all play the part, and the show or movie would work just the same, and everything would work. It just comes down to math. Only one person can fill that role out of 10, so mathematically, the odds are not in anyone's favor, but it doesn't mean you won't make it. It just means the odds of getting those early parts just through auditioning are against everybody. For every Ashton Kutcher that moves here and lands in that 70s show in a couple weeks, there are thousands, if not tens of thousands of people that don't. That's just math. That's just reality for most people. And then two things happen. Either people learn that hard lesson, even some of the most talented actors, even some of the most good-looking actors, they see that it's not as easy as they were led to believe and they leave, and or they get creative and they figure out, how am I going to make it anyway? How am I going to make it no matter what the odds are? And how am I going to make it no matter what anyone says? And how am I going to make it in a way where I stack the deck in my favor? And that's where calculated risks comes in, because that unbarred, untethered, raw risk works really well to get you here and works really well for the people that literally get lucky. And as I said, that's literally just what it is, and it does happen, and it's what keeps the whole thing going. But for those of us that stay, for those of us that don't hit that very small probability, but we decide we're gonna make it anyway, it really all comes down to calculated risks, because it's all a risk. Staying here, working on films, writing and acting, no matter how good you get, there is no guarantee. There are plenty of incredible actors I know that are so good at acting, it is a goddamn shame that not everybody in the world knows who they are. So, what is calculated risk? Calculated risk is really how Hollywood game is played. It's how the studios play it. It's how once you're out of that honeymoon phase with Hollywood, if you're here for a few years and you don't break, which for most people, that is reality. If you're listening to this podcast, you're either probably someone who wants to move here or someone has moved here. You have a lot of talent. You have literally everything it takes to make it. You just have come to the terms that statistically, maybe you weren't in that 0.01% that break early, and you're like, I need to make it anyways, and that's why you're listening to my show, because I am one of those person that wasn't in that 0.01%, but I have all the talent and skill I need to make it anyways, and that is exactly what I am going to do, and that's also why I'm making my own films and I'm making the show, because it's something I want, and I'm not going to settle for anything less, and I don't think anyone listening to this show should settle for anything less either. So it all comes down to calculated risk, and this is how the studios play it. Now it's literally all algorithms, it's all math, and it's all statistics. I don't believe in that fully. I believe there's always an X factor. That's why movies like Obsession, I'm going to say it again, mostly unknown cast, upcoming YouTube creator. I guess Curry Barker's massive audience did negate some of that risk, but the movie's a banger because It was well written, it was well lit, it was well shot, it was well performed, had good music, it had all the things you need to be a great movie, and then it blows up, and that's why we love it. So there's always an X factor at play that I believe in, and I believe that's part of the equation, but the studios, they don't see, it's all about calculated risk. So it's what are the box office numbers of these actors in these territories, of this IP, mainly, especially IP, how many people know about this property, is it Marvel, is it Spider-Man, is it Star Wars, is it Harry Potter, is it Avatar, is it even Nolan? Literally Nolan in himself is IP, and honestly, Nolan is probably the most bankable and most valuable per actual talent in Hollywood. I will say that. I think Chris Nolan himself, out of all the talent, which and by talent is actors and directors and writers and top producers, just everyone that is in the creative above the line demographic, which above the line on a film is producers, directors, writers, and actors. Chris Nolan is probably the number one most valuable piece of IP or piece of talent at the time of me making this episode. I don't mean as a person, I just mean as an actual talent making money for Hollywood, because that's what they're looking at. That's what the industry is looking at. And Chris Nolan is bankable, and all his movies are bankable. Some are better, some are worse, but every time his movies are cracking a bill. That just seems to be the way it is. Literally, Chris Nolan as a director is IP like Marvel or Spider-Man or DC, which is crazy that a director has gotten to a point where he is IP. That is nuts. Anyways, getting back on topic here, it's all about calculated risk. When you're an actor or a filmmaker and you decide to take control over your career and you start thinking without losing that creativity and that X factor that made you who you are, like the studios, I mean, they're at a point where there's so much money on the line, there's almost no creativity in their movies unless they hire Chris Nolan to make the movie. But in the stuff they make, I mean, it's all about minimizing risk when really the bangers are all about the risk. So you gotta take risk. It's just that you have to take calculated risks, right? Because acting like you're in your 20s and just being in wishful thinking and just living day to day just on that whim, the odds are not in your favor, and you don't want to play the odds. You don't want to play a losing game, because yeah, you could be that one person in 10,000, but you don't want to stake your life on that. Who does? I sure as heck didn't. I realized in a couple years that it wasn't a very, no matter how good I got at acting or writing, it wasn't a very good game in terms of the odds. Like, yeah, I stacked the deck more in my favor by getting really good at my craft, and I started booking more jobs, but there just weren't enough good jobs that no matter how good I got at acting, I didn't want to wait around hoping to get that one job. Just not very good deal. So I started making my own films, and that has been the path. And so what I've done, I made a first movie, right? So I made a movie called The ASTRID Experience. It's very good. Technically, for the budget, it is innovative. It won some awards. It was ranked the 5th best iPhone film of all time. It's got cool art. It's well shot for the budget and for being on an iPhone. I think the performances are pretty good considering we were running and gunning. Story's good. It's a small movie, and it did what it needed to do to get me a larger budget and get the interest of larger producers. And now I'm at a point now where I'm going to have a real budget where $500,000 is real money, and it's all about calculated risks, right? Because I need to win to make another movie. I've already accepted that if this movie doesn't hit, at least if it's not successful enough that it makes everybody's money back, then I probably won't be making another movie, right? That's just reality. So this movie has to hit. A lot has to go right for a movie to become obsession. You can't always control that, but everything that I can control, I'm doing by taking calculated risks. And how am I taking calculated risks? Because I've learned through trial and error, through failure myself, through watching other people fail, and also from winning myself and watching other people win. I learned what works and what doesn't, and what you should do if you want to stack the deck in your favor. So my calculated risk on the Influencer House is that it's a genre script and a hot genre, which is horror right now, Gen Z horror, which is really hot in the zeitgeist. I have a working actress right on the cusp of stardom. I have a producer with a track record that has distributed films with really strong distributors that have distributed multi-$100 million films. And so I have stacked the deck in my favor for this to win. Now, I ultimately can't control the variables, but all I can do is make the best movie with what I've got and also hire the right people in the roles. I passed on a lot of producers that wanted to do the movie before I landed landed on my producer just because I didn't believe that bringing them on board was a smart move for my career or for the film or for the investors that are eventually going to invest in the film. So calculated risks, right? I'm taking a risk no matter what by taking $500,000 and making a movie, but by being smart, by making sure I protect the project and hire the right people and put the right people around me, I'm taking a calculated risk where I'm stacking the deck. It's all a risk, but it is less risky when you have a really strong actress with a following that people want to see, that really has everything it takes to be a star. It's a lot less risky when you have a producer with a track record that has distributed really strong films that have always made a good return. It's a lot less risky when you surround yourself with investors that want to grow with you and are also interested in more than just the money, because the money you can't always control, but there are a lot of other perks to investing in a film. It's a lot less risky when the director, myself, has already made an ultra low budget film. Like I've explained to you guys, to make an ultra low budget film before you make a bigger film, so that if you do make mistakes, it's on a lot less budget than if you make bigger mistakes, so it's going to cost you a lot less. So I am a sophomore feature filmmaker, and like many filmmakers, it's their sophomore feature film that goes, because they learned all their hard lessons on their first feature, and hopefully that first feature was under $100,000 and wasn't $1 or $2 million, like a lot of filmmakers make films for that much, and then they never get to make a film again because those mistakes were just too costly. So I have stacked the deck by taking calculated risks, and it's all about calculated risks. As an actor, if you're taking the front door in, it's all about figuring out how to get those right reps, right? Because every day you're in Hollywood as an actor, it's a risk, because you're at the mercy of forces outside of your control constantly. You're at the mercy of what projects come your way. You're at the mercy of the whims of the industry. You're at the mercy of the whims of the culture. Is your look in right now or not? Is your ethnicity in right now or not? Is even your gender in right now or not? It's that crazy. I have lived through all of it. So the key is that you find a rep that gets you. Like I've said before, I've been in Hollywood for 15 years and I still haven't been able to connect with a rep that really gets me, my brand, or what I'm doing. So for me right now, it really doesn't even make sense for me to have reps until they come to me or I find the rep that really fits what I'm doing. Even then, it's all about calculated risks, right? It's about finding projects and finding a rep that gets you, because every time you audition and every time you work on a project, you are giving time in exchange for money. Hopefully, you're giving time, which is the most valuable asset as an actor, to a project. And if that project doesn't hit, or it doesn't get finished, or it gets done and it sucks, that affects your career, and therefore everything is a risk. That's why it's all about taking calculated risks, right? Is this project, is this director, is this producer, is this script, especially, in my opinion, the most important part, is it worth my time as an actor? Is it taking me in the direction I want to go? Because that is your most valuable commodity. And especially as a producer, right? It's all about calculated risk, because as a producer, unlike an actor, you are on a film actors might be on an indie film for a month. You know, if it's a really, really huge indie film, maybe 6 weeks. If it's a studio film, 3 or 6 months. As a producer, you are going to be on a project for 2 to 4, maybe 5 or 6 years, some 10. In fact, most people won't produce unless it's a calculated risk, because you're choosing to do it. You're choosing to give it your time and money. And most producers will not produce anything unless they would do it for free, unless they're living it, blood, sweat, and tears. Because for the most part, most producing work, especially when you're starting, is unpaid. You may get paid for the days you're on set, but the principal photography on most indie features is 2 to 4 weeks. So those may be the days you're actually getting paid. And then all the years of development, and maybe you'll get paid for post-production too, but for the most part, all the years of development where you're with the script and you're with the writer and you're with the project, most of the time you're not getting paid. And then also after the film is done, all that time is usually not paid either. So it's a massive risk. And most producers wouldn't produce something unless they loved it, because it just doesn't make sense with how much of their life they're going to give to this project. So as an artist, it's really all about calculated risks. The studio truly lives, especially at this point, which I think is why movies haven't been as good the last decade, is because it's too calculated. They're trying to figure out something that ultimately nobody really knows, and trying to mathematically take creativity and put it into a mathematic equation really isn't creative, and that's not what we're about here. But I think having some data is smart, but also leaving room for inspiration as an artist, as an actor, as a filmmaker, as a writer is really the name of the game. Yes, take risks, because without risks, there is no reward, period. Every day, you got to put your soul on the line, and every day you're in Hollywood sacrificing other comforts that people that work normal jobs and live normal lives have. Every day that you're here doing this, it is a risk. So make sure that you're being smart with your time, your money, and energy, which are the three things that you have to create. That's your time, that's your money, the money that you have, because it's an expensive career. There's a lot of maintenance costs. There's a lot of overhead costs to doing it. And then also with your energy, because working multiple jobs in the most expensive city in the world while pursuing your dream can be a very time, money, and energy consuming endeavor. So make sure you're being smart and taking calculated risks daily. Stack the deck in your favor. Work smarter, not harder, and take those risks. Just make sure the risks that you're taking make sense for you and take you in the direction you want to go. That's how the studios play it, and that's how you got to begin to play it as an artist when you really take a look at the business side and figure out how does the business support your art, not the other way around. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Unlimited Creation. I'm Cal Barnes. Remember to subscribe on YouTube and Spotify for more weekly content. And until then, keep taking calculated risks.